I'm going to put up an example of I think, how we behave, which we sometimes forget. And there you have it. Of course, darling, I love you. Then why did you cheat on me? I stopped by your place, sweetheart. Didn't find you, and your neighbor offered a discount, so I took her instead. Very real, I think, is that if you are walking into a particular store, an outlet, whatever it is, I don't know how many times you will walk out, get back in your car and drive to the next shopping center to access a loaf of bread, or to pick up a t-shirt, or, you know, you would be quite hard-pressed to do that in terms of the opportunity cost that you subconsciously might weigh up. Here's another example. You walk into a supermarket, your favorite brand is out of stock. If you're a Pantene girl, tough luck. There's now organics. I'm out of stock. I don't think you have this emotional reaction at all. You probably pick up Sunsilk, it'll do. And I think part of that is that in the 21st century, certainly in 2012, we have such incredible regulation around product quality, processes, in terms of legislation, that you don't get bum products. You really don't. So your risk is pretty low, even if you may make an alternative choice that might not have been your first, but the risks are pretty low to you. So we got to the point where we, I guess, came to this conclusion that at best we were having the wrong conversation around differentiation with regard to the market and our customers. And at worst, we had probably lost our voice completely. And we asked the question that if a customer buys and you don't need to be different for them to buy you, okay, why then do they buy what they buy? Just an interesting thought. This is the market we play in. Heck of a competitive, very mature. All of us like to tell you about our heritage. You know, we've been around from 1838, F&B, first branch, Grahamstown. Our competitors will tell you that they've been around for 175 years as well. So we've been going strong. We've been around for a long time. And within this context, the more developed, I suppose, those categories get, the more they become blurred by stereotypes. Now, you know them. I joined F&B in June 2010, and spent a bit of time talking to customers, interrogating our research, and it came out consistently, where people would go, a bank is a bank is a bank, yes. People would go, ivory towers, they don't care. People would go, very expensive, you know. And so what we realize is that the category, this thing called banking, not the brands within it, the category takes on an identity of its own. And that identity then tends to blur or skew the identities of the individual brands within it. And so you have these general statements, these general associations, ivory towers, etc., that get played around. And when you ask people to unpack specifics in relation to an individual brand, they can't do it. And I think you may well agree with me that if I asked you off the bat to tell me what the difference was between the telcos, you'd probably say red, yellow. Okay, you can't fundamentally say this is them, and I buy into them because of that thing. They've all got contracts, they've all got prepaid, all the packages look the same, airtime bundles, no airtime bundles, and availability. It's just been quite interesting. And what is dangerous in this context is that if people, consumers, are bored by the category, boy, are you on a hiding to nothing, because the category identity goes first. And if they're bored by the category, they pay zero attention to the individual brands within it. So our task, obviously, was how do we rattle that cage and get people to look at us within this context of banking which they were like going, okay, enough now. I'm not really interested. So it was quite interesting for us to understand that our posture as customers and as consumers towards a category tends to dictate our behavior towards the brands that it contains. And that's why you have this general apathy, and you're happy to leave 1.7 billion rand, 1.5 billion rand, sorry, on the table, because you just reckon it's not worth it to do much about it. The other thing, quite frankly, is that you're busy, right? So you're quite happy to not optimize. You're quite happy to satisfy, because the risk of actually getting it wrong is not gonna kill you, pretty much. So this was part of our unpacking of the context as we started embarking on this journey of shifting, I suppose, the F&B brand and business from being lost in this space to actually people identifying it as distinct from the category. So here's our good old slide. A bank is a bank is a bank. And to, I guess, continue the conversation is connoisseurs see differences, okay? I'm a wine drinker, bloody clueless, right? Completely. So I must admit, I get this, is that I can have someone next to me, and I do it all the time, so you order, I'm happy to, whatever you're drinking, I'll have. It's cool. You know, whatever you're on makes you happy, got to be good. But I can't pick up these little nuances of, oh, the whiff of the guava. I lose it completely. Okay, so connoisseurs see differences, novices see similarities. For the most part, and if you're not in the banking hall every day and it's your life, boy, you're a novice. You are just seeing a blanket out there. And because of the fact that the market doesn't perceive rival brands to be all that different, the thing that we realized, or we see, is that I bet if I asked for a show of hands, in fact I will ask for a show of hands, how many of you are multi-banked? You prostitutes, you. Because that's the point, okay? Is because you're not discerning these subtle differences, you don't particularly care one way or the other, it's all good. And so there's a high degree of purchase duplication, infidelity in my words, in the sector, right? And in a funny way, when we started, you know, it's even possible to segment the market on that basis, because you're either indifferent, okay, or you're confused, or you're cynical. How's that for a target segmentation strategy? And so we learned that people clearly are not spending a lot of cognitive time. A lot of what they're doing with us is just habit. My father banked there, I got a student loan from them. I mean, okay, not a lot of cognitive time making a deliberate purchase decision of us as a choice. We also saw that you don't attract, the brands, certainly in the category, are not attracting different types of users. There you are. You have multiple accounts. So the notion of differentiation appealing to you because there was a distinctive thing that you were missing, that you were seeking, a little bit of, okay, I was going to use a rude word, but you know what I mean. There's no significantly different price elasticities, and I want you to hold that thought because we've tried there. So typically what you would pay for ATM withdrawals or what you would pay for an account, they were sort of all in the same sort of highway. And there were no distinctive image characteristics that one had and another didn't. You know, we're in the service industry to start with, so best you provide some level of service, you smile, you're friendly. There's nothing distinctive that could be attached to any brand exclusively and uniquely that could not be applied to somebody else. So again, the question that if people don't perceive brands to be necessarily different, then presumably this is not the reason why they buy. So there was something else at play. And for us, it was a little bit of asking, how can we innovate the stereotype? Put it in other ways, how can we innovate the pain? Okay? Because that's pretty much what's in your head. Is there's pain, it's a schlep to move, not interested in going down that route. It's not worth the opportunity cost. So we set ourselves a target, obviously, of innovating these stereotypes, not being this ivory tower, but being real and human, being accessible, being relevant in terms of your life. And a big part of that, quite frankly, because of this blurring of the category identity and it's obscuring our identity, is we needed to make the category not boring, simply put. And not a lot of people go around getting pretty excited about banking as a category. So it was quite a challenge we set ourselves in that regard. And so we set about this little journey of enticing people out of their entrenched consumption patterns. And I'm going to remind you very quickly of Mr. Drucker and a wonderful quote where he talks about the purpose of business and says, clearly it's to create a customer. The business enterprise has two and only two basic functions, innovation and marketing. And in many ways we then said, okay, fine, how do we tick both of these boxes? And it was said earlier by Doug, that you don't wake up one day and you lead and that's it. It's the notion of the gazelle and the lion. Best you always have your running shoes on. And we then set about actually trying to get a lot of what we took to be inherent and hygiene in terms of our business practice actually above the line in a sense. And the first was this notion of being distinctive. I'm a distinctive kind of gal, okay? I'm not, as you hopefully have learned by now, not a differentiation kind of gal at all. My view around being distinctive is that it's the first way in which, a customer walks along and they've got to know that you're there, first of all. So it's the little goodies that we all take for granted that we think we have, that very often we neglect or we allow to be abused in terms of our corporate identity. As an example, being distinctive means that people need to be able to recognize you, recall who you are, identify you in a crowd. And one of the things that was very apparent in getting to F&B was that turquoise was not the favorite color. And so, banking is all about prestige and status, and we thought we'd prefer black and white because that's really nice. And it's sort of demure and it's elegant, and you get lost because there's just no identification. People cannot recognize that you in fact exist. So for me, distinctive is about standing out. You need to give your customer every single opportunity to first see you, memorize you, bank it, recall you, and hopefully recall you at the point at which they're making a purchase decision. So strangely enough, branding, not necessarily brand, but branding, and I'll come back to brand in a minute, does matter. And if I can share anything with you, is to don't allow that to creep. And I know Doug said it's not about the logo on the bottom right side. Absolutely not. But it is about ensuring that people understand and can identify. It's a shortcut to who you are. And take very good care of your non-named assets, because that's often where the abuse comes in.